Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Oh, boy, howdy, do we have a show here as we wake you up in the beautiful sunlight of the 17th day of April, live from your nation's capital, all across the Mid-Atlantic and worldwide. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. If you missed our first 2 hours, well, it's your loss, I'll be honest with you. But you won't have to worry about it if you subscribe to our podcast, download the episodes, and take a listen. In fact, our great executive producer, Heather Hunter, breaks out the interviews separately. A lot of people really like our interviews, Julie, and they don't want to hear our nonsense about critter news and 80s movies. And so they just listen to the interviews, and you can do that if you want, but you got to subscribe to the podcast to get those interviews. And speaking of interviews, at 8:05, we'll have one with Senator Tommy Tuberville, and at 8:35, West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrissey. That's Julie Gunlock I was just referring to, by the way. Good morning, Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
And joining us right now is Brenda Diaz. She is a candidate for the Montgomery County Board of Education. We were just discussing last night's meeting and a bit of a dust-up with Bethany Mandel, where, I don't know, Brenda, first of all, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for running for office.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be with you.
It kind of seems like the Montgomery County Board of Education, I mean, maybe they're representing the parents of Montgomery County, but I know a lot of parents in Montgomery County, and they can't believe what's going on in the public schools. Are you one of them?
I am definitely one of them. I mean, the situation is just, I mean, we hear story after story of, children, with fentanyl and just overdosing in bathrooms and fights happening. I mean, I had a friend of mine text me a video the other day of her son nearly being stabbed in the bathroom of his high school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is serious. So what's happening in the schools is very scary. And they downplay it. MCPS downplays it.
Oh, of course they do. Montgomery County Public Schools used to be sort of the crown jewel of the Maryland school system and one of the envies of this region. And you're right, it has been completely degraded. First of all, what do you think is at the root of that? And what can you do if you were to get elected in District 2? What could you do to start steering the school system back to where it belongs?
I think a lot of the problems that we're facing now is due to the COVID policies that MCPS put in place. We were one of the very few districts in the entire country that stayed closed for as long as it did. And so it had a serious impact on our children. I mean, we talk about mental health wellness. The children talk about it all the time. But we see it being played out. They don't want to school. Attendance is really low. Their scores are low. There's just a lackadaisical attitude when it comes to school. And then on top of that, the behavior is just mind-blowing. So one of the things that I really want to do is bring back the SROs. I mean, if you were at the MoCo forum, what you would have seen is that everyone who's not an incumbent wants to bring back the SROs. So that's the first thing. We want to bring back the SROs. We want to revise the student code of conduct. It's just restorative justice practices are not working. And we need to start issuing consequences, even in elementary school. I mean, our children, when you learn that there are consequences for your actions, you tend not to repeat them. This is standard, logic. And we need to go back to that.
There is a culture of secrecy in a lot of public schools. I live in Northern Virginia, and it's just shocking to me in some of these schools how they do not share. You mentioned fentanyl. There were fentanyl overdoses in some Northern Virginia schools, and parents were not told for days. It's just a shock. How would you tackle, because I do think that there's specific policies that can be put in place, but there's a culture of secrecy. There's a culture of disdain of parents. How would you change that? What actions can be taken so that parents feel confident that the board members are listening to them?
Right. So the issue of trust is definitely a major thing that we need to tackle. So one of the things that I really want to do is just take the board meetings to where the parents are at. So we need to, because they have the board meetings in central office on Hungerford Drive, and that's all well and good. But the parents don't go out there. We need to be at the schools, at the local schools, rotate where the meetings are taking place. So different people can come and attend. We need to have the meetings at different hours. You know, right now, like we have one of our 2 meetings happens in the daytime, and teachers, students, the community cannot attend those meetings. I think also, like, this might be something minor, but when when MCPS makes their announcements of things that are happening, it tends to be on a Friday when people really aren't paying attention. Yeah. That's something else that, like, we need to change. You know, we need to make our announcements, you know, maybe Monday morning, maybe Tuesday morning, when people are actually paying attention to their week and are still very focused on getting things accomplished. Also, I mean, I think, you know, attending more community events and just being open and honest. It's funny because during the meeting, that Board of Education meeting, what we saw was a lack of humility from the incumbents that did attend. Yeah. You know, Rebecca Mondrowski. Yeah. Yes, Rebecca Mondrowski didn't attend.
The hubris is so thick with them. It's insane.
Oh, it's pretty insane. And when confronted about their COVID policies, and even just recently about how, you know, they looked down upon, well, specifically Lynn Harris, who, you know, made a disparaging comment towards one of the students who testified about opt-out. Yeah. When confronted about that, you know, she was like, what are you even talking about? And then when I asked her for an apology, she was like, for what? Like, what would I be apologizing about?
Yeah, so everybody knows the opt-out that she was, that's for parents to be able to opt out their very young children from sexually explicit materials and instruction. And the Board of Education then disparages the children who are actually speaking out, giving voice to this and saying, I don't want this in my life. Brenda Diaz is our guest. It's Diaz, Diaz, for BOE.com. That's where you can get more information if you're in District 2 in Montgomery County. Real fast, Brenda, before we leave, because we're talking about the issues, and that's important in the school board and what you can do. Tell us about you. Who are you? How did you get here? What has your career been? I know that I'm looking at a picture of you with your 3 dynamic and very, very impressive daughters. Tell me who you are, why you got here, and why you want to ruin your life by being on the Board of Education.
Well, you know, I've been teaching all my life. I started as a Spanish teacher at an elementary school in D.C. I was a preschool teacher. I had my own Spanish language business for a bit, teaching preschool kids. I got my master's degree at George Washington and, you know, James Madison Fellow. So I studied the Constitution, and I've been on numerous, you know, professional development workshops all over the country on the Constitution, on American history. I mean, I'm right because I love the spark in children's eyes when they're learning. I love it when they grasp the concept and they just move forward with it and they expand upon it. They gain the skills. I mean, that's my passion, is what I love doing. And so what I've seen is that that's not happening anymore, and I want to bring that back to our children. I run a farm and forest program where I see children negotiate, compromise, organize amongst themselves. I see their resilience. I see their passion. I see their creativity. And I really I want to bring that back to our public schools. We can do that.
I'm glad you brought up Heart of Joy Learning, because if you didn't, I was going to. It looks like a fantastic nonprofit program that you've established for hands-on farm instruction, and really more than just farming. Children, when they are engaged in these activities, they learn a lot, especially working with each other in cooperation. And I'm assuming that's available for homeschool parents as well, because I know a few out there.
Yes, it's for homeschool parents.
Very cool.
Every Tuesday. Yes.
All right. Well, listen, this is how we change things, by getting people like Brenda Diaz elected. So go to Diaz, D-I-A-Z, for BOE.com. And you can contribute. And frankly, I would guess even more importantly, contributions are important, but you can volunteer as well and actually join her cause and try to knock on doors to get her on that Board of Education, so we can have a couple of voices, maybe bringing some alternate ideas. Brenda, great meeting you, and well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It is 7:15, WMAL traffic and weather.